Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas, Monday, October the 30th. Welcome to our video commentary. We've been reading in the news quite a bit about the hurricane damage in Puerto Rico. Well, there was also a lot of damage in Cuba. We just don't hear that much about it. And as a consequence, Cuba has obviously been looking for help, and China has stepped into the picture. And China has provided some humanitarian assistance, as well as apparently setting up some commercial arrangements between Cuba and China. And I find all of this rather interesting. The official explanation says that China wants to sell cars to Cuba, buses, trucks, and all of that may very well be true. The problem is that Cuba is a very small market. I mean, I don't know how many cars the Chinese intend to sell in Cuba. Cuba does not have a consumer market where you have Cubans who buy cars like they do in other countries of the world. Trucks, well, most of those would have to be, I suppose, related to the government. And how many trucks could they possibly buy? Not that many. And then, of course, other things, tractors and so on, again, not that much. So what it comes down to is, what exactly is China looking for by all of a sudden being so interested in Cuba? I mean, the Chinese have to know the history of Cuba when it comes to doing business with other countries. Normally, Cuba will purchase things on credit, and then eventually it cannot pay them because it does not have a market that generates market activities like most countries do. And then eventually, all of that debt has to be restructured. Just recently, last year, Cuba had to restructure a lot of its foreign debt. So the Chinese have to know this. The Chinese have to know that this is not really a market for consumer products, or for that matter, for many Chinese products. I mean, they could probably sell more cars in just about a dozen other countries around the world than they can in Cuba. So what are the Chinese looking for? Well, I think that there is a national security interest here for the Chinese. China, as you know, has been expanding. They are projecting themselves around the world with their navy, with their firepower, and I think they may be tempted to try to put a military base in Cuba, or maybe a place for their submarines, or maybe for their warships to go to Cuba, or potentially for some of their airplanes to land and take off from Cuba. This is something that, of course, would pose a severe threat to the United States. Certainly, it would be a challenge to the United States. So I think that's what the Chinese are looking for. They're looking for a military outpost. They're looking to project their power outside of Asia and into the hemisphere of the United States, or the Western hemisphere. So I hope that when President Trump visits with China, I understand they're going to talk about North Korea and trade and other more pressing matters, but I hope he sits down with the Chinese and tries to understand just exactly what is the objective of China in Cuba, and I hope he makes it very clear that the United States is not going to tolerate any military expansion of China into Cuba. We really cannot afford to, given the way China is growing, and given the fact that at this point Cuba is probably willing to do anything, surrender anything to get assistance from China. So I hope we have a frank chat. I hope the president has a very strong chat with the Chinese about their future ambitions in Cuba. Have a wonderful day, everybody, and congratulations to the Astros and to the Dodgers. They are putting on an amazing baseball show. This is one of the greatest World Series that I've seen in quite some time. Goodbye, everybody.